Hi, I'm Jasmine, lead for communications at E3S. Today, compliance isn't just annual. Agencies and regulated enterprises must prove it continuously. Watsonx Governance automates control mapping, evidence validation, and real time security posture. Through our IBM and TD SYNNEX partnership, E3S integrates this into Singularity-IT, giving organizations continuous assurance from day one. And to chat with us this morning and give us some more details about Watsonx Governance is Damon Quimby, and Damon is a solutions architect at TD SYNNEX. Welcome, Damon.
Hi, Jasmine. Glad to be here
Hi.
today. Yeah.
Would you like to share with us this morning and start your presentation?
Yeah, so just real quick, let me share my screen. Hopefully that looks good. So as you see there, it says at TD SYNNEX. So TD SYNNEX is we're the largest distributor in the world for IBM. We sell IBM in the billions. So we are dedicated to them, and I personally am dedicated to the Watsonx line of products, which is primarily watsonx.ai, watsonx.data, and watsonx.governance. And so today we're going to give you a high-level overview of the watsonx governance product. And it's really just to familiarize you with the opportunities that it provides. And so to begin though, we're going to start out by talking about another product that we're all very familiar with, and that's ChatGPT. And only because it's been in the news a lot, and it's something that most of us have on our phones, in our pocket, and we might use it to help you write a greeting card to someone or something like that, or write a letter or what, it has a lot of, purposes that people use casually. But another thing ChatGPT has done is it's brought a lot of scrutiny to AI in the eyes of the public, right? Because if you think about some of the results that it was giving people sort of early on. I know some of my favorites. I like to mention because they make me laugh. If you asked it when the Mona Lisa was painted, it would say in 1815, which is about 360 years off. That was wrong. So this is probably one of my favorites. Someone asked a question about pizza, and it said to keep the cheese from sliding off of a slice of pizza, just add glue to your recipe. So, it makes us, sort of laugh a little bit now, but at the time, and even now to some, it gives people the idea that maybe AI is not ready to be scaled across an enterprise. It might be a fun tool to have in your pocket and do casual things, but at the enterprise level, maybe it's not ready. But that's not the case at all with IBM. IBM already has a well-established track record of decades of helping clients gain real business value from their AI and data science projects. They've been doing AI for decades, like we said, but to ensure that your AI works in a responsible, transparent, and explainable way, making it something that people can trust, companies really need to implement a governance strategy. And so that's where watsonx governance comes in. And like we said, it's a third component of IBM's industry-leading cutting-edge AI and data solution. And some important points about it, it's platform agnostic, it's hybrid cloud capable, and it's fully customizable to meet the needs of really any customer. And so why do we say that it's so critical now to employ AI governance? Well, if you look at this slide, you see sort of the rate of AI adoption, right? Just look at some of these statistics, 80% of enterprises are already working with, or they're planning to work with foundation models and adopt generative AI. It's projected to raise global GDP by 7% in the next 10 years. And, as more research leads to more capabilities, more models, that sounds pretty feasible. And it also represents 30% of what's already a huge overall market by this year. Now, I don't know if that's happened yet, but we'll have to wait for some more statistics on that. But the point is, what we all can agree on, what we know is that AI is happening now on a grand scale, and so no company can afford to miss out on this opportunity. But again, the point of that is that this kind of growth happening at this speed is not without concerns. And so if we look at this slide, some more statistics, but you'll see that these are all in the upper 40s, right? These numbers, over 45% on those first three. What are the concerns, with scaling AI across an enterprise? Well, 80% of these business leaders that were surveyed see at least one of these ethical issues as a major concern. So the first one there, nearly half believe that the decisions made by Gen AI are not explainable enough. Where's the output coming from? How does it arrive at that? How does it reach this decision? Again, like again, I'm going to bring up ChatGPT again. When you give it an output, it gives, or excuse me, when you give it an input, it gives you an output, and that's it. You have no idea how it arrived at that, do you? Or where that output came from, or how it achieved that response, because it's opaque, right? Now, if we look at the next column there, ethics. These business leaders are also concerned about the safety and ethical aspects of AI. Is it going to, give someone some sort of hate speech, or is it going to advise someone to do something that's illegal? Or is it accessing like personal private information somehow and disseminating that? Or maybe it's giving you copyrighted content. And you wouldn't want to use that, right, in an enterprise. And so then the third one there, nearly half of these business leaders believe that AI will propagate bias. And the kind of bias we're talking about here is like gender bias or racial bias. And really the short answer to that question is yes. If there's any bias in the training data, you can expect at some point some of that bias is going to creep into the results. And then given the size of the training data for a lot of models, it's really difficult to screen for that and ensure that you have any chance of that out, right? That you've been able to remove it. And so in light of these first three concerns we see on this graphic, look at the last one. I mean, nearly half of these business leaders don't believe that AI can be trusted. And so in the minds of these business leaders and other leadership in these enterprises, you might say, like let's say there might be an HR department or the legal team. These concerns that we see on the left side of this slide, transparency, explainability, drift, fairness, PII leakage, right? And those concerns represent risk. And so IBM has approached this and sort of crystallized these concerns into three specific kinds of risk. And that's regulatory, reputational, and operational. Now, just a little bit on each of these. Regulatory, that's pretty obvious. No enterprise wants to be out of compliance with some law or regulation, right, that might apply to their company, their industry. The second one, reputational. What are we talking about there? That's your brand. we know how critical branding is. It could make or break a company, right? Your reputation, your branding, right? And we can't afford to take a hit to that. And then the third one there, an operational risk. No enterprise, especially in this economic climate, can afford operational risks either. And what we mean by that, let me just give you just a quick example. Let's say a bank is using AI to approve or deny loans. Right? Now that's pretty straightforward because there's certain criteria has to be met. It either meets it or it doesn't. So that's fairly straightforward in the AI world to do something like that. But let's say some bias has crept into the model, or the model, maybe it's experienced some drift. And what that means is that's when the performance of the model sort of degrades a little bit over time, over a long time. Or let's say some personal data somehow got in and it starts releasing some personal data, right? So now maybe, it's approving loans that it shouldn't. That's a risk, right? Or maybe it's denying loans that it should be approving. Well, your bank is missing out on business, right? So neither of those outcomes are good, are they? And so that's why we said, earlier that it's imperative that companies implement an AI governance strategy. And so now you know, that's a cool terminology, but what does that actually mean? So IBM has defined AI governance this way. It's the process of directing, monitoring, and managing holistically all of the AI initiatives or activities of an organization. So you can't just govern this one project over here and ignore the rest, so to speak. So that's how IBM has defined AI governance. And so what does that, again, let's expand on that a little bit. What does that mean? What do we actually need to do, right? So we look at our first column there. We need to be able to monitor and evaluate the models that we're using for fairness, accuracy, drift. It says there HAP, so that stands for hate, abuse, and profanity. And then it also mentions PII there. That's personally identifiable information, right? And then they need to be explainable. We don't want that black box that we talked about earlier with ChatGPT type of thing. We want it to be a glass box, fully transparent. So if you need to, you can go back and see exactly how a model arrived at a given output. Then you have to be able to track all these metrics automatically, right? You don't want to have to manually go in and do it, right? So that you can associate those metrics with that model and where it is in its life cycle. Whether it's still in development or pre-production, or maybe it's already been deployed, right? If you can do that, now you have auditability, and now you have some governance, right? So, and let's think about it, because what we're really trying to do, right? Let's say we're trying to evaluate two models against each other, because we want to track the risk. What is the risk to the enterprise from using this model or that one, right? So, well, let's think about that for a minute. How are enterprises doing that now? There's not really a lot of standardized tools and platforms in place for doing this. So the reality is most companies, I mean, sad to say, a lot of companies are just crossing their fingers and kind of hoping for the best. But the ones that are trying to take action, many of them, what they're doing is sort of a homegrown in-house, I call it a hodgepodge bunch of steps and operations that, like maybe, well, this code is running on this developer's machine over here, and And but that one's running on this one server over there, or let's see, or maybe is it running on that server in Houston? You see where we're going with this? And it's and the other thing is it's a lot of manual processes. It's a data science team. They're running tests, they're generating reports, and then they're putting those nice results on some nice spreadsheets, and then they're sending those off to upper management for approval. And then what happens when you email someone a spreadsheet? You're going to probably wait, right? So now they're waiting for an email reply back from management before they can proceed with, either more development on that model, or maybe it's ready to be deployed, or or maybe the answer is we're not going to use that one. Put a halt on that one altogether. We're not going to use that. But the point of all this is that this slows everything down, and if you want to get value out of your AI, you've made an investment. That's the name of the game, is to you want to see that ROI on your AI project, right? So we don't want to slow things down, and we also don't want to uh, introduce a bunch of points of possible human error into these processes, right? So think about that. Well, all the time you have all these manual processes and you're waiting for a lot of things to happen. The company's exposed to risk all that time. And that's not the result we want either. So here's a couple screenshots just to give you an idea of what Watsonx governance gives you. Just an idea what it looks like. This is the dashboard we mentioned. Now, if you see like that second one is all the models. You could see all of them. Some of these organizations are using, 30, 40, 50, 60 models, different models for different use cases, right? So you don't want to, like we said, you don't want to just govern, one or two of them. You want to govern all of them. Right? And that's what you can see at a glance on this dashboard. All the models across the I don't know why that one switched like that. All the models across the enterprise, you can customize these views too for different stakeholders in the company, because maybe not, a manager may not need to see a certain level of detail that the data scientist wants to see on this. So this is highly customizable. Now, a lot of us have probably heard of IBM OpenScale. That's been around for years. IBM's been using that. It monitors AI for drift and bias. There's another product by IBM called AI Fact Sheets. And what that does is that collects all that metadata and all the facts about a model and keeps it with that model. So at a glance, you can look at that information, that data. And then IBM Open Pages is another product that's been around for many years, and that's IBM's GRC solution. So for governance, regulatory, and compliance, and it will bring into the dashboard here whatever regulations apply to this use case that you're working on. But the point is, all three of these products are now built into Watsonx governance. So now we can move on to this one. So this shows how the monitoring service uses a data mart to store all of the model inputs and outputs. And it uses those to calculate model metrics. And there's a huge variety of metrics supported right out of the box. But there's also the ability to define and create custom metrics. And then the evaluation data is recorded and cataloged on the fact sheet we talked about for that model or prompt. So we're also focused on agentic AI, and that's probably all you're hearing about now in the most recent conversation. People are going to talk about AI, they're talking about agents. So Watsonx Governance now offers faithfulness measurements for agents, which helps to verify that the final output produced by that agent is by the agent referenced, that the agent referenced the correct tools, I should say, for each subtask that it goes to do. And you know, with so many AI apps being available now, let's say just like Copilot, for instance, it's really prolific. Everybody's got it on their desktop now. More organizations are struggling with the existence of what we call shadow AI, and that's where AI projects or maybe employees are using AI apps that aren't tracked or governed, and maybe we call them unsanctioned, right? AI usage in your organization. So Watsonx now integrates with another IBM product called Guardium. It's IBM Guardium AI Security. And that allows clients to get automated and continuous monitoring for all AI deployments. It will go out on your network and detect shadow AI usage. So it detects those security vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and it manages security interactions between users, models, data, and applications. And so if it finds that shadow AI usage, it will bring those models into the governance framework, and then your risk is then mitigated. So just a couple use cases. Now on use cases, IBM again has already implemented and has in the field working over 6,500 different unique use cases. And so these are just a couple of my favorites real quick. A large bank used Watsonx governance for regulatory compliance. A large retailer used it to detect potential bias in hiring. And the third one there, the US Open, I think probably a lot of us have seen this in action or know about it because the US Open's pretty popular, but 15 million fans followed the US Open last year on their app and on their website. And the US Open has been working with IBM for many years, but they're using Watsonx to develop Gen AI models to take data from the matches, and then they publish that original content in the form of the highlight reels. And I don't know if you've seen them, but they're really cool. And there's over 254 singles matches in the US Open. But doing that the old way with editing video and condensing it down into a highlight reel, it used to be something that took them hours. Maybe 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours later, you could watch those highlights. But now they're instantaneous. But they also use Watsonx governance for transparency and for bias monitoring. And so another integration we wanted to tell you about is that Amazon SageMaker. Now that's Amazon's AI platform. And they use Watsonx governance to monitor the models and for management of risk and compliance. And that's so if you're using SageMaker, you want governance, it's going to be IBM Watsonx governance. And again, we just want to leave you with the assurance that IBM is the true leader in the AI governance space. And this is not just our own opinion. This is from IDC. This Magic Quadrant shows that pretty well. You can see the large pink circle in that upper right corner is IBM. Now, one client said after seeing a demo, she said, our whole organization is rushing into Gen AI, but we don't even have this in place yet for our existing models. So we don't want that to be you or your enterprise, right? So just let us know when you want to start governing your AI in a way that's responsible, transparent, and explainable. So you can continue to build trust in your brand and boost productivity, and all the while minimizing the cost of compliance and reducing risk. So reach out to End to End, and we'll be happy to help you.